Lucifer Morningstar had walked into many worlds uninvited, but few announced their sins as loudly as this one. New York City burned with neon ambition and quiet despair, a place where gods were plastered across billboards and salvation came with sponsorship deals. Towering above it all stood Vought Tower, glass, steel, and hubris stacked into a monument to manufactured divinity. It gleamed under the afternoon sun like a cathedral to ego, every reflective surface screaming the same lie. You are safe because we are powerful. Lucifer smiled as he crossed the street. He wore a tailored black suit, immaculate and understated, the kind that suggested money without begging for attention. No wings, no flames, no celestial radiance. Just a man who looked like he belonged anywhere power gathered. As he stepped through the revolving doors of Vought Tower, the security scanners flickered, then died entirely. Guards frowned at their screens, tapping them with irritation. Lucifer didn't slow. The lobby smelled of polished marble, expensive perfume, and fear. Fear was subtle here, buried beneath confidence, training, and corporate smiles, but it lingered all the same. He could hear it in heartbeats, taste it in shallow breaths. Hundreds of desires brushed against him at once. Ambition, lust, envy, desperation. A banquet. The receptionist looked up, already smiling, before her eyes reached his face. Then the smile faltered. "Sir," she said, fingers tightening around her keyboard. "Do you have an appointment?" Lucifer leaned casually against the desk, lowering his voice just enough to feel intimate. "No, but I do have a question." Her pupils dilated. A familiar warmth spread across her thoughts as his presence brushed her soul. "What do you desire most?" he asked gently. She swallowed. The room seemed to narrow around them. Her voice shook. "I want to be seen. I want to matter. I want them to stop treating me like I'm replaceable." Lucifer nodded, unsurprised. "Of course you do." Behind her, a manager hurried over, irritation already loaded into his stride. "Sir, you can't." Lucifer turned his head, meeting the man's eyes. "And you?" he asked. The manager froze mid-sentence. Sweat beaded on his temple. I want the board seat. I want Edgar gone. I want to be the one who decides who's a god and who's a liability." The silence that followed was profound. Lucifer straightened, smoothing his cuffs. "Wonderful. Then we're aligned." Security finally reacted. Two guards stepped forward, hands near their weapons. One reached for Lucifer's arm. The moment his fingers made contact, pain unlike anything he had ever known detonated through his body. He screamed, collapsing to the floor, clutching his hand as if it were on fire. There was no visible wound, no burn, just terror flooding his face. Lucifer sighed softly. "Oh, do be careful," he said. "Consent matters." The second guard backed away, face pale. Within minutes, the lobby was chaos, phones out, whispers spreading, supervisors barking orders that no one quite obeyed. Somewhere upstairs, alarms began to chirp, not because of a threat, but because systems no longer trusted themselves. Lucifer walked past them all, unchallenged. Elevators refused to respond to keycards. They opened anyway. As the doors closed, Lucifer caught his reflection in the mirrored walls. For a brief moment, wings shimmered behind him, vast, terrible, and beautiful, then vanished. Not for them. Not yet. 3 floors below the executive suites, a Vought legal analyst stared at her screen in confusion. "There's no record of him," she said. "No birth certificate. No immigration data. No Compound V signature. He doesn't exist." Stan Edgar's replacement, an interim CEO with more confidence than competence, folded his hands. "Everyone exists. Find out what he wants." Lucifer stepped into the executive floor like a king returning to a stolen throne. The air was cooler here, filtered and sterile. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city as something owned rather than lived in. Men and women in tailored suits turned as one, their conversations dying mid-sentence. They felt it now. Not fear exactly, but weight. The sense that something fundamental had entered the room. Lucifer stopped at the center of the open office. "Good afternoon," he said pleasantly. "I'm Lucifer Morningstar." No one laughed. I was hoping to speak with whoever's in charge of well. He gestured vaguely. God. They exchanged glances. A few nervous chuckles escaped, more reflex than humor. We represent Vought International, a woman said carefully. If you're a soup, we can discuss. Oh, I'm not, Lucifer interrupted. But you are. Or rather, you make them. That landed wrong. Faces tightened. Lucifer walked toward the windows, hands clasped behind his back. You see, where I come from, divinity is a burden. Responsibility. Consequence. Here, he turned back to them, eyes gleaming with amusement. Here, it's a product. He stopped in front of a conference table, placing his palm against its polished surface. The wood creaked, then bowed inward, collapsing into ash without flame. Several executives recoiled. I've come, Lucifer continued calmly, because I'm curious. You sell gods to a world that doesn't believe in them anymore. You promise safety while feeding on fear. And you've done it all without a single demon whispering in your ear. He smiled wider. That's impressive. A man near the back stammered, What do you want? Lucifer met his gaze. What do you want? He asked in return. The man's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I want immunity, he whispered. I want to never be held accountable. Lucifer nodded, satisfied. Around the room, truths began to spill, quiet at first, then faster. Confessions no one intended to make. Desires buried under contracts, and NDAs clawed their way to the surface. Lucifer listened, attentive, delighted. Far above them, in a private suite draped in red, Homelander paused mid-workout. He frowned. Something was wrong. For the first time in years, a feeling crept into his chest that had nothing to do with rage or hunger. It was fear, and it wasn't afraid of him. This world was going to be fascinating, and dangerous, and honest, whether it wanted to be or not. If you want to see more characters collide with worlds like this, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see next in the comments below. Lucifer Morningstar had arrived, and the lie of gods was about to burn. Vought International had survived scandals, massacres, congressional hearings, and the slow erosion of public trust. It had learned how to absorb catastrophe, reframe it, and sell it back as reassurance. What it had never learned, because it had never needed to, was how to deal with something that refused to be branded. Within an hour of Lucifer Morningstar's arrival, a crisis room had been assembled on the 42nd floor. Frosted glass walls, muted lighting, and a table long enough to seat empires. Every person inside wore the same expression. Controlled urgency layered over rising dread. Let's be clear, said Madeline Stillwell's successor in tone, if not in talent, a senior vice president of global strategy named Alana Pierce. He is not hostile. Yet. On the screen behind her, paused security footage showed Lucifer standing in the executive office, hands folded, smiling as if attending a dinner party in his honor. He hadn't moved in 23 minutes. He walked through our scanners, a tech director said. Killed them. Not fried, * killed star. Like they just decided not to exist anymore. Compound V, someone asked. No biochemical markers. No radiation spike. No enhanced vitals. He's normal. The tech swallowed. Except when he isn't. Alana exhaled slowly. So we treat him like an unknown soup asset. High value. Unregistered. Potentially unstable. Lucifer, watching through the reflection in the glass behind them, chuckled softly. He could hear everything, of course. Every whisper, every heartbeat speeding up as his name was spoken. The irony delighted him. They believed knowledge was control, that classification was power. In hell, such people were the easiest to break. The doors to the crisis room opened. Lucifer stepped inside. The room went silent. Several people stood instinctively. Others froze, mid-breath. One man dropped his pen. It clattered loudly against the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Please, Lucifer said pleasantly, gesturing for them to sit. No need to be dramatic. You're professionals. So am I. Alana Pierce recovered first. She rose, extending a hand that trembled only slightly. Mr. Morningstar. I'm Alana Pierce. Vought International. We're very interested in learning more about you. Lucifer glanced at her hand, then took it. Her skin was cold. And what do you want, Alana? He asked. Her breath hitched. The question slipped past her defenses like smoke through a crack. I want to be indispensable, she said quietly. I want to survive the next purge. Lucifer released her hand. Wise. They sat. Coffee appeared, untouched. Tablets lit up. A dozen recording devices quietly failed without warning. Alana cleared her throat. You understand how this works. If you're a soup, you need representation, structure, a narrative. We can help you become whatever the world needs you to be. Lucifer leaned back, crossing his legs. And what does the world need today? A stabilizing force, she said smoothly. People are scared. Trust is low. Homelander is polarizing. You could be positioned as something different. Older. Wiser. A corrective. A god, Lucifer said. A few executives smiled reflexively. Others looked uncomfortable. We don't use that word, Alana said. Lucifer raised an eyebrow. Of course you do. You just trademark it. He stood, pacing slowly behind their chairs. With each step, the air felt heavier, as if gravity itself leaned in to listen. You see, he continued, where I come from, people blame God for their failures. Here, you blame bad PR. It's adorable. He stopped behind one man, resting a hand on his shoulder. The man stiffened. What do you want? Lucifer asked him softly. I want to know if he can be controlled, the man said, eyes glassy. I want to know if we can kill him if we have to. Lucifer smiled. Ah, there it is. The lights flickered. For just a fraction of a second, everyone in the room saw it, not with their eyes, but somewhere deeper. A vast infinite darkness, not evil but absolute, stretching far beyond comprehension. They felt judged. Not condemned, asterisk measured star. Then it was gone. Lucifer returned to his seat. No, he said calmly. You cannot control me. And no, you cannot kill me. But I'm not here to rule you. Alana's voice was tight. Then why are you here? Lucifer folded his hands. Because you sell divinity without responsibility. Because you manufacture monsters and call it heroism. And because I want to see what happens when the lie stops working. A silence fell, thick and oppressive. Let's talk terms, Alana said finally. Visibility, compensation, legal immunity. Lucifer laughed, a rich, genuine sound that made several people flinch. Oh, my dear, I don't want your money. I don't want your lawyers. And I certainly don't want immunity. He leaned forward, eyes burning with interest. I want access. To what? Someone asked. To your gods. Elsewhere in the tower, Homelander stood perfectly still, staring at his reflection in a mirrored wall. He had tried to listen in, tried to focus his hearing like he always did. All he heard was static. That scared him more than he would ever admit. He clenched his fists. The mirrors cracked. Who the hell are you? He muttered. For the first time in his life, the question wasn't rhetorical. Back in the conference room, Alana nodded slowly. We can arrange a meeting with the Seven. Lucifer rose to his feet, straightening his jacket. Splendid. I do so enjoy meeting celebrities. As he walked toward the door, he paused, glancing back over his shoulder. One more thing, he said lightly. You should know everything you're planning to do to me? His smile sharpened. You've already admitted you want to. He left them sitting in stunned silence. Above them, the city buzzed on, unaware that its gods were about to be judged by something that didn't want worship, only honesty. And honesty in this world was the most dangerous force of all. The Seven had been assembled on short notice, which in practice meant 45 minutes of frantic image management, wardrobe adjustments, and whispered damage control. When the doors to the conference suite finally sealed, the room smelled faintly of hairspray, disinfectant, and tension. Homelander stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, jaw tight. He wore the flag like armor, the familiar red, white, and blue pressed and perfect. Normally, that alone commanded the room. Today, it felt thin. Queen Maeve leaned against the wall, arms folded, eyes tired. A train bounced restlessly on the balls of his feet, trying not to look nervous. The Deep sat a little too straight, as if posture could compensate for relevance. Starlight watched Homelander closely, unease written plainly across her face. Black Noir stood in the corner, silent as ever. Yet even he was more still than usual. The doors opened. Lucifer Morningstar walked in, as if late to a cocktail party. No announcement. No fanfare. Just the soft click of expensive shoes against polished floor. He stopped a few feet from the table, surveying them with open curiosity, like an art collector examining forgeries. "Oh," he said after a moment. "This is delightful." Homelander bristled. "You got something to say it." Lucifer turned his gaze on him. The room shifted. Not physically, no shockwave, no flash of power, but internally. Every soup felt it at once, a pressure behind the eyes, a subtle unmooring. The sensation of standing too close to a ledge and realizing how far the drop really was. Lucifer smiled warmly. "Hello. You must be Homelander." "I know who I am," Homelander snapped. "Who the hell are you supposed to be?" Lucifer took a step closer. The air felt colder. "I'm the devil," he said simply. A-Train laughed, sharp and forced. "Okay, man. Cute bit. You some kind of psychic soup." Lucifer didn't look at him. "You," he said instead, nodding toward A-Train. "What do you want?" A-Train's mouth opened automatically. "I want my speed back," he blurted. "I want everyone to forget I ever slowed down. I want to matter again." The room went quiet. A-Train's eyes widened. "Why did I say that?" Lucifer turned to Queen Maeve. "And you?" Maeve stared at him for a long moment, then exhaled. "I want it to end," she said. "I want to stop pretending I'm strong enough to survive this." Starlight's breath caught. Lucifer nodded thoughtfully, then shifted his attention to the Deep. "Oh, this should be interesting." The Deep flushed. "Don't. I want people to respect me," the Deep said, voice cracking. "I want them to stop laughing. I want to be loved." Lucifer's expression softened, just a fraction. "You confuse love with approval," he said gently. "Common mistake." Black Noir remained silent. Lucifer studied him longer than the others. "And you," he murmured. "You already know what you want." No response. Lucifer turned back to Starlight. "You're the outlier," he said. "Why is that?" She swallowed. "Because I already know what I want," she said carefully. "And I don't think you're here to help." Lucifer's smile widened, impressed. "Very good." Homelander had been vibrating with barely contained rage. "Enough," he growled. "You don't get to walk in here and mess with my team." Lucifer finally faced him fully. The world seemed to narrow to the space between them. "Your team," Lucifer repeated. "Tell me, Homelander, what do you want?" Homelander's jaw clenched. "I want." Nothing came out. He tried again. His lips moved. His throat tightened. Lucifer tilted his head. "Oh dear. That's fascinating. What are you doing to me?" Homelander hissed. "Nothing," Lucifer replied. "I'm simply listening. And for the first time in your life, there's nothing there but noise." Homelander's eyes flickered. Fear flashed through them, raw and naked. "No," he whispered. "That's not true." Lucifer stepped closer. "You don't want love," he said softly. "You want worship. You don't want justice. You want permission. And beneath all of it," Lucifer leaned in, voice barely audible. "You're terrified that if someone like me exists, then you never were a god at all." Homelander snapped. He moved faster than sound, fist flying toward Lucifer's face. The impact never came. Lucifer caught his wrist effortlessly, fingers closing with gentle finality. The floor beneath them cracked, spiderwebbing outward from the pressure, not from Lucifer's strength, but from Homelander's. Lucifer didn't even look strained. He sighed. Violence. How predictable. Homelander strained, muscles bulging, veins standing out in his neck. He couldn't move, couldn't pull away. Panic flooded his face. Lucifer leaned close, eyes glowing faintly amber. "You are not special," he whispered. "You are loud." With a flick of his wrist, Lucifer released him. Homelander stumbled backward, nearly falling. No blood. No bruises. Just humiliation. No one spoke. Lucifer straightened his suit, then looked around the room. "You see," he said calmly, This is the problem with gods who don't know why they exist. He turned toward the door. I'll be seeing you again. Some of you sooner than you'd like. As he left, the weight lifted. A-Train collapsed into a chair, gasping. Maeve stared at her hands. The Deep looked like he might cry. Starlight watched the door, thoughtful. Homelander stood alone at the head of the table, shaking with rage and something far worse. Fear. For the first time, someone had looked at him and found him wanting. And somewhere deep inside, a question began to fester. One no amount of applause could silence. If he wasn't a god, then what was he? Homelander did not scream. That alone terrified everyone who knew him. He stood in the Seven's conference room long after Lucifer Morningstar had left, fists clenched at his sides, jaw locked so tight it looked like it might shatter. The silence pressed in on him, thick and humiliating. No one dared speak. Even Black Noir had shifted subtly closer to the wall, as if distance might matter. Homelander's reflection stared back at him from the glossy table surface. Perfect hair, perfect smile frozen into something brittle. He could still feel it. The moment. That emptiness Lucifer had touched. Nothing. No grand desire. No divine calling. Just noise. Hunger. Fear. That didn't happen, Homelander said finally, his voice flat. Maeve said nothing. I said, he repeated, louder now, that didn't happen. A-Train nodded too quickly. Yeah. Just some mind control soup trick. We've seen worse, right? Homelander turned on him. A-Train flinched. Homelander's eyes glowed red for half a second, then dimmed. He hadn't even meant to do it. The loss of control sent a fresh spike of panic through his chest. Starlight broke the silence. He wasn't lying, she said carefully. About what he is. Homelander stared at her. You want to say that again? She met his gaze, forcing herself not to look away. He didn't feel like a soup. There was no edge. No ego. He wasn't trying to prove anything. That's because he's a fraud, Homelander snapped. A walking PR stunt. But the words rang hollow even to him. Somewhere deep inside, a memory stirred. Dr. Vogelbaum's voice, soft and clinical, explaining how he'd been raised, how he'd been designed, how love had been replaced with observation. Homelander's breathing quickened. Meeting adjourned, he barked suddenly. Get out. No one argued. As the room emptied, Homelander remained behind, pacing. He tried to listen, really listen, stretching his super hearing outward, tuning into the building, the city, the world. Lucifer was gone. Not masked. Not hidden. Just absent. That frightened him more than any enemy he'd ever faced. Across the city, Lucifer Morningstar stood on a rooftop overlooking Times Square, hands resting on the railing. Below him, humanity churned. Screens blaring, crowds surging, advertisements screaming promises they could never keep. God smiled down from every angle, perfect and hollow. He closed his eyes. This world didn't pray anymore. It consumed. It demanded. How exhausting, he murmured. A presence approached behind him. Hesitant, cautious. Lucifer didn't turn. You're hard to track, said a familiar, gravelly voice. Billy Butcher stopped a few steps back, hand hovering near the gun tucked into his coat. Huey lingered behind him, eyes wide. Frenchie and Kimiko watched the alley. Mother's Milk stayed near the exit, professional and alert. Lucifer smiled. And yet here you are. Butcher studied him with naked hostility. You the bloke been given Soup's panic attacks. Only the honest ones, Lucifer replied. Huey swallowed. You're not on Vaught's files. No, Lucifer said lightly. They don't keep records on inevitability. Butcher snorted. Right. Listen, mate, I don't care what you are. Angel, devil, freak of the week. If you're another bloody Soup, you're part of the problem. Lucifer turned, finally giving them his full attention. He looked normal. Too normal. No costume. No glowing eyes. Just a man who radiated quiet certainty. And what do you want, Billy Butcher? Lucifer asked. Butcher's jaw tightened. I want every last one of them gone. Lucifer nodded. Of course you do. And you? Lucifer asked, glancing at Huey. Huey hesitated. I wanted to stop, he said softly. I want people to stop getting hurt. Lucifer's gaze flicked to justice. To Frenchie, redemption. To Kimiko, peace. He straightened, impressed. You're an ugly little choir, he said. But you sing honestly. Butcher scowled. You gonna mess with our heads too? Lucifer stepped closer, stopping just outside Butcher's personal space. No, he said calmly. I don't need to. Butcher felt it then, not compulsion, not fear, but recognition. Like standing in front of a mirror that didn't flatter. Lucifer lowered his voice. You hate them because it's easier than hating yourself. Butcher's hand twitched toward his gun. Stepped in. We didn't come here for therapy. No, Lucifer agreed. You came because you heard something impossible walked into Vought Tower and didn't die. He smiled faintly. And you were hoping I might be useful. Silence. Butcher exhaled sharply. You offering? Lucifer considered him. I don't work for causes. I don't do salvation. And I certainly don't kill gods for sport. Then what do you do? Huey asked. Lucifer looked back out over the city. I give people exactly what they ask for. That sent a chill through all of them. But here's the catch, Lucifer continued. I don't protect you from the consequences. Butcher met his gaze. Something dark and eager flickered there. Sounds fair. Lucifer smiled, slow, dangerous, intrigued. Oh, Billy, he said. You're going to regret how quickly you said that. High above them, thunder rolled, not from a sky, but from something deeper. The false gods had been shaken. The real reckoning was just beginning. The first rule the boys had learned, long before Compound V, long before Homelander, was simple. If something felt too powerful to understand, you didn't trust it. Lucifer Morningstar violated that rule by not asking for trust at all. They sat in a dimly lit bar 2 blocks from nowhere important, the kind of place that smelled like old wood, spilled liquor, and people who didn't want to be seen. The jukebox hummed softly in the corner, a tired song looping endlessly. Lucifer occupied a booth like he belonged there, one arm draped casually along the backrest, fingers wrapped around a glass he hadn't touched. Butcher watched him like a bomb with opinions. So let me get this straight, Butcher said. You waltz into Vought, scare the piss out of the 7, and now you're slum minute with us. Why? Lucifer didn't answer immediately. He tilted the glass, watching the liquid inside shift without spilling. Because you're interesting, he said at last. And because unlike them, you don't pretend you're righteous. Snorted. That's not a compliment. It wasn't meant to be, Lucifer replied. Huey leaned forward. You said you give people what they want. What does that mean? Like wishes. Lucifer smiled at him, not unkindly. No magic lamps. No loopholes. I simply remove the barriers you place between yourselves and your desires. Frenchie frowned. That sounds like a bloody nightmare. Yes, Lucifer agreed. It usually is. Butcher's eyes never left him. You could kill Homelander. Lucifer met his gaze. Held it. I could, he said calmly. The word hung in the air like a loaded gun. But you won't, Butcher added. Lucifer's smile thinned. That depends. On what? Asked. On whether the world is prepared for what comes after, Lucifer replied. You see, killing a god doesn't erase belief. It creates martyrs, legends, excuses. Butcher slammed his hand on the table. So we just let him keep killing people? Lucifer leaned forward, eyes sharp now. You already have. Every compromise you've made. Everybody you've stepped over to get closer. You tell yourselves it's necessary. That you're different. He glanced at each of them in turn. You're not. Kimiko shifted uncomfortably. Huey swallowed. So what, this is just a lecture? Lucifer chuckled. No. It's an offer. Butcher's lips curled into a humorless grin. Knew it. I will not fight your battles, Lucifer continued. But I will remove the lies. Vought. The 7. Homelander himself. I can make the world see them as they truly are. Frowned. That kind of truth would cause chaos. Yes, Lucifer said simply. Frenchie shook his head. People die in chaos. Lucifer's gaze softened slightly. People are already dying. Chaos would merely be honest about it. Butcher leaned back, considering. And the cost? Lucifer's eyes gleamed. Ah, there it is. He turned fully toward Butcher. What do you want most, Billy? Butcher clenched his jaw. You already know. I want to hear you say it. Silence stretched. Finally, Butcher spoke. I want Homelander to suffer. I want him to know fear. And when he dies, I want it to mean something. Lucifer nodded slowly. Then here is my price. The air in the booth seemed to tighten. I will give you a world where Homelander can no longer hide, Lucifer said. But in exchange, you will not pretend you are better than him. No moral high ground. No absolution. Huey shook his head. That's insane. Lucifer looked at him kindly. It's honest. Stood. We don't deal in damnation. Lucifer rose as well, towering not in size, but in presence. Everyone does, he said softly. You just call it justice. Butcher stared up at him, eyes alight with something dangerous. You gonna make us monsters? Lucifer leaned close, voice barely above a whisper. No, Billy. I'm going to stop you from lying about it. He stepped back, smoothing his jacket. Think about it. I'll be around. As Lucifer walked toward the door, the jukebox abruptly died. The lights flickered once, then steadied. The boys sat in heavy silence. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. Above the city, clouds gathered, thick, oppressive, charged. Back in Vought Tower, Homelander crushed a glass in his hand, shards biting into his skin as blood dripped onto the pristine floor. He didn't feel powerful. He felt watched. And for the first time in his life, he wondered if the devil had been right. The confession went viral in under 12 minutes. It began as a routine morning broadcast, Vought News Network's flagship program, polished anchors smiling through carefully curated outrage. The churn promised reassurance. Vought addresses recent security incident. Analysts stood ready. Talking points were loaded. Damage control was rehearsed down to the syllable. Then the anchor stopped reading. Her eyes glazed over, breath hitching as if something inside her had reached up and taken hold. I don't believe in any of this, she said quietly. Producers screamed in her earpiece. She didn't blink. I lie for a living, she continued. We all do. We call it balance. We call it patriotism. But the truth is, we protect murderers because they make us money. The control room descended into chaos. Cameras kept rolling. Within seconds, a second anchor joined in, voice shaking. We buried footage. We paid families. We rewrote history because Vought told us fear sells better than honesty. The feed cut to black. It didn't matter. Clips were already everywhere. Phones buzzed across the city, across the country, across the world. Social media erupted. Timelines flooding with raw, unfiltered confessions. Vought executives, PR managers, lawyers, politicians, all speaking into cameras, mirrors, live streams, not realizing they were being watched until it was far too late. Lucifer Morningstar stood in the middle of Times Square as it happened. Hands in his pockets, eyes lifted toward the screens towering above him. He hadn't touched them. He hadn't needed to. All he had done was remove the lie. Around him, people screamed, argued, cried. Some laughed hysterically. Others dropped to their knees. Phones clutched in shaking hands as idols shattered in real time. A man sobbed openly as a former Vought vice president confessed to greenlighting a cover-up involving a school bus and a training accident. A woman stared blankly as a senator admitted on live stream that soups terrified him, and that appeasement was cheaper than accountability. Lucifer inhaled deeply. Truth had a smell. Sharp. Metallic. Like ozone before a storm. At a safe house 20 miles away, the boys watched the feeds in stunned silence. Jesus Christ, Huey whispered. He didn't kill anyone. But people are going to die because of this, said grimly. Riots. Retaliation. Panic. Butcher's eyes gleamed. Or maybe they finally stopped swallowing the bullshit. Frenchie shook his head slowly. He turned desire into a weapon. Kimiko signed sharply, her movements urgent. World-breaking. Yes, Butcher muttered. About bloody time. Vought Tower went into lockdown. Emergency protocols kicked in, servers purged, executives evacuated, legal teams scrambled. None of it helped. Every attempt at denial triggered another confession. Every press release became an admission. The harder they fought, the worse it got. Alana Pierce locked herself in her office, hands trembling as she stared at her reflection in the glass. "Stop," she whispered. "Please." Lucifer appeared behind her. She screamed, spinning around, back pressed against her desk. "You said you wanted to survive," Lucifer said gently. "I'm giving you the chance." Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't mean like this." Lucifer tilted his head. "No one ever does." She sank into her chair, sobbing. "We didn't know how to stop. It just worked. Selling gods. People wanted to believe." Lucifer crouched to meet her eye level. "Belief is not the problem," he said softly. "Abdication is." He stood. "You'll tell them everything. And then you'll live with it." He vanished, leaving only the echo of her own thoughts, screaming for escape. Across the city, Homelander hovered above Vought Tower, fists clenched, cape snapping violently in the wind. Below him, protesters swarmed the streets, chanting his name, not in praise, but in accusation. He could hear it all. Every curse, every sob, every whispered fear. "They're turning on us," he muttered. "They're turning on me." A missile battery locked onto his position from a nearby rooftop. For the first time, it wasn't a drill. Homelander's breathing grew ragged. "Lucifer," he growled. "You did this." Behind him, a voice answered calmly. "No," Lucifer said. "You did." Homelander whirled around, nearly colliding with him midair. "You think you're better than me?" Homelander shouted. "You think tearing it all down makes you right?" Lucifer floated effortlessly, hands clasped behind his back. "No," he replied. "I think it makes you visible." Homelander lunged again. This time, Lucifer didn't stop him. Homelander's fist passed straight through him, through illusion, through expectation, sending him spiraling off balance. Lucifer reappeared a few feet away, expression unreadable. "You want to be feared," Lucifer said. "But fear without love is empty." Homelander screamed in frustration, unleashing a blast of heat vision that carved molten lines across the sky. Lucifer watched, unimpressed. "Careful," he said quietly. "You're proving my point." Below them, the world watched gods fall, not from a sky, but from grace. And the truth kept spreading. Unstoppable. Billy Butcher dreamed of fire. Not the cleansing kind. The kind that burned everything down and left nothing but screaming silhouettes etched into concrete. He woke with his jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached, the echo of Lucifer Morningstar's voice still curling through his skull like smoke. No absolution. That was the part that stuck. The safe house was buzzing when he emerged. Phones ringing, laptops open, news feeds stacked with riots, resignations, and emergency declarations. The world was cracking along fault lines that had always been there, and now everyone could see them. Looked up from a tablet. National Guard's been deployed in 6 cities. Vought assets are pulling out of half their international operations. Frenchie added, 3 soups already retired themselves. 2 disappeared entirely. Huey rubbed his temples. "This is bigger than us." Butcher snorted. "Everything's bigger than us." That's never stopped anyone. A shadow moved at the edge of the room. Lucifer stepped out of it as if it had been a doorway. No flash. No warning. Kimiko sprang to her feet, blade flashing into her hand. "Easy," Lucifer said mildly. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be having a very different conversation." Butcher didn't move. "You enjoying the show?" Lucifer glanced at the screens. "Immensely. Humans are so honest when the masks come off." MM's voice was tight. "You've destabilized half the country." "Yes," Lucifer agreed. And people are dying," Huey snapped. Lucifer's gaze settled on him. "People were dying yesterday," he said gently. "The difference is you didn't know their names." Silence followed. Butcher broke it. "You said you'd give us a world where Homelander couldn't hide." Lucifer nodded. "I have." "Then finish it," Butcher said. "End him." Lucifer studied him carefully, as if weighing something delicate. "Is that what you want?" he asked, "or is it what you need to justify everything you've done?" Butcher's lips curled. "Don't start playing shrink." "I'm not," Lucifer replied. "I'm offering you a choice." The air thickened, not with power, but with inevitability. "Homelander will fall," Lucifer said. one way or another. The question is whether he does so as a monster slain or a god exposed. Frowned. What's the difference? Martyrs inspire followers, Lucifer said. Failures inspire silence. Butcher's eyes burned. So you want to humiliate him? Lucifer smiled faintly. I want him to understand himself. Homelander was losing control. Vought Tower had become a fortress overnight. Barricades, mercenaries, military hardware ringed around a building that had once been a symbol of safety. Inside, executives fled or hid. Outside, crowds surged, screaming his name in fury instead of worship. He hovered above it all, heart pounding, every insult drilling into his skull. They don't love me, he whispered. A voice answered from behind. No. Lucifer stood on nothing, feet planted in the air as if it were solid ground. They never did, Lucifer continued. They loved what you represented. Homelander spun, eyes blazing. Shut up. Lucifer drifted closer. You were a product before you were a person, he said calmly. Raised without choice. Top performance instead of identity. Homelander's hands shook. You don't know me. I know you better than you know yourself, Lucifer replied. That's the tragedy. Homelander roared, charging him again, tackling Lucifer through the air. They slammed into the side of a nearby building, concrete exploding outward. For a heartbeat, it looked like a fight. Then Lucifer placed a single hand on Homelander's chest. And the world changed. Homelander gasped. He wasn't flying anymore. He wasn't strong. He was small, trapped in white rooms, voices behind glass, needles, tests, praise without warmth. Every memory he had buried surged to the surface at once. Lucifer hadn't taken his power. He'd taken his excuses. Homelander screamed, falling away, crashing into the street below with earth-shaking force. Lucifer descended slowly, standing over him as smoke curled upward. You want to be a god, Lucifer said softly. But gods choose what they are. Homelander looked up at him, eyes wet, face cracked open in naked terror. What am I? He whispered. Lucifer considered him. You're a warning, he said. Sirens wailed. Cameras turned. The world watched its strongest icon kneeling in the rubble, not defeated by force, but by truth. Lucifer straightened, sensing eyes on him from 1,000 angles. From rooftops, from screens, from the shadows where men like Billy Butcher waited, fists clenched, wondering if this was justice or something worse. The age of pretending was over. What came next would be chosen. Vought did not survive humiliation well. Within hours of Homelander's collapse being broadcast across every major network, the corporation shifted from damage control to retaliation. Truth had cost them their narrative, and without it, fear was all they had left to sell. They sold it quickly. Black sites activated. Dormant killswitch protocols were dusted off. Military liaisons who had smiled politely for years stopped answering questions and started issuing orders. Supes who had been retired were suddenly back on the payroll, armed with experimental tech and promises of immunity. If Lucifer Morningstar wanted honesty, Vought would drown it in blood. The first explosion rocked a research facility in Nevada, officially abandoned, unofficially full of scientists who knew too much. The second followed in Romania, where a rogue soup sanctuary vanished in a pillar of fire. News outlets tried to keep up. They failed. At the center of it all, Vought released a statement. External entity confirmed. Hostile non-human actor manipulating civilians and soups alike. ***. Lucifer Morningstar became a headline, then a threat, then a target. Lucifer stood atop a church in Chicago as the announcement rolled across massive outdoor screens. The irony amused him. Humans had always been so quick to outsource their sins. They need a devil, he murmured. How convenient. Below him, police lines strained against protesters and counter-protesters alike. The city smelled of sweat, fear, and ozone. Helicopters circled overhead like vultures. A missile screamed toward him. Lucifer didn't move. The missile froze midair 10 feet from his face, shuddered, then folded inward like paper, collapsing into a harmless lump of metal that clanged uselessly onto the church roof. Lucifer sighed. Honestly, Such theatrics. He stepped off the edge and walked down the air itself, descending into the chaos below. The boys were already on the move. "This is turning into a bloody war zone," Butcher said, as they sped through backstreets in a stolen SUV. "Vaught's gone full scorched earth." Glanced at his tablet. "They're mobilizing soups internationally, framing Lucifer as an invasive threat." Frenchie cursed. "They turn him into the boogeyman. People stop asking questions." Huey swallowed. "Is he going to stop them?" Butcher's jaw tightened. "That's the thing. I don't think he wants to." In Washington, D.C., a closed-door emergency session convened beneath layers of security. Generals, intelligence chiefs, and politicians sat around a reinforced table, staring at footage of Lucifer walking through riot lines untouched. "We cannot allow a foreign god to dictate reality," one senator hissed. A general snorted. "With respect, sir, I don't think we get a vote." Plans were drafted anyway. Containment fields. Experimental weapons. A final option buried, so deep it had no official designation. If Lucifer could not be controlled, he would be removed. At any cost. Homelander watched it all from a hospital bed reinforced with more steel than a bank vault. He hadn't healed as fast as usual. Not because his powers were gone, but because something inside him had cracked. Every screen showed Lucifer. Calm. Untouchable. Framed as the enemy. "They're blaming him," Homelander muttered. A handler hesitated. "Public opinion is volatile." Homelander laughed weakly. "Good. Let them be afraid." The handler stiffened. Homelander's eyes narrowed. "Get me out of here. We need clearance." Homelander grabbed him by the throat, lifting him effortlessly. The handler's feet kicked uselessly. "I don't need permission anymore," Homelander whispered. He dropped the man and walked out, alarms screaming behind him. Lucifer felt the shift. The moment humanity stopped asking why and started asking how to kill. He stood in the middle of an abandoned plaza as armored soups surrounded him. 6 of them, enhanced beyond regulation. Nerves shot through with fear and adrenaline. "Stand down," one shouted. "You're under international arrest." Lucifer looked at them with something approaching disappointment. "You don't want this." One fired anyway. The bullet disintegrated before reaching him. Another soup lunged, strength magnified tenfold. Lucifer caught him gently by the wrist and whispered, "What do you want?" The soup sobbed instantly. "I want to go home. I want my daughter to stop being afraid of me." Lucifer released him. The man collapsed, powerless, not physically, but emotionally. The others hesitated. Lucifer turned slowly, addressing them all. "You were made into weapons," he said, "and now you're being used to protect a lie." He spread his arms. "I am not your enemy," he said, "but I will not save you from yourselves." They fled. Cameras caught everything. That night, Butcher stood on a rooftop, watching the city burn with argument and unrest. Lucifer joined him without a sound. "They've made you the villain," Butcher said. Lucifer nodded. "Of course. It's comforting. But you could end it," Butcher pressed. "Shut it all down." Lucifer looked at him. "And teach them nothing?" Butcher's voice was low. "People are going to die." Lucifer met his gaze, eyes ancient and unflinching. "They always do. The question is whether they die believing a lie." Butcher looked away, jaw clenched. For the first time, he wasn't sure which side he was on. Above them, the world teetered, caught between manufactured gods, a real devil, and the unbearable weight of truth. The first attempt to kill Lucifer Morningstar was classified as a training exercise. The second was called a malfunction. By the third, no one bothered naming it. Deep beneath a decommissioned Cold War bunker, men and women in lab coats stared at a weapons platform that wasn't supposed to exist. It hummed softly, rings of light rotating around a core that distorted the air itself. "Localized reality inversion," a scientist whispered. "If he exists in reality, we remove the reality around him." A general folded his arms. "Will it work?" The scientist hesitated. "On anything else?" "Yes." "Then fire." Lucifer felt it before it happened. Not pain, *resistance star. The air thickened around him as he walked through Central Park at dawn, the city eerily quiet after another sleepless night of protests. Birds froze mid-flight, sound warped, bending inward. He stopped. "Oh," he said softly. "That's new." Reality folded. The park vanished. Lucifer stood in a white void, edges undefined, space collapsing inward like a clenched fist. Gravity tugged in conflicting directions. Time stuttered. A cage made of physics. Lucifer looked around, impressed despite himself. "You built a box and assumed I was inside it." The void tightened. Pressure mounted. Enough to erase cities, enough to tear atoms apart. Lucifer exhaled. The void cracked. Not exploded, asterisk cracked asterisk, like glass under a patient hand. Color bled back in. Trees reappeared. The park snapped into place with a thunderous shockwave that sent shockwaves rippling across the city. Every screen within 50 miles went white for 3 seconds. When the feed returned, Lucifer stood exactly where he had been, suit unwrinkled, expression mildly annoyed. He said. "Rude." The bunker went dark. Every monitor shattered at once. Every man and woman inside heard a whisper, not in their ears, but behind their eyes. "You wanted certainty." Lights flickered back on. Lucifer stood at the end of the chamber. Several people screamed. One scientist collapsed, sobbing. Lucifer surveyed the weapon thoughtfully. "You built this out of fear," he said, "but also curiosity. I rather like that." The general reached for a sidearm. His hand wouldn't move. Lucifer met his gaze. "Tell me," he said calmly, "did it make you feel powerful?" The general swallowed. "Yes." Lucifer nodded. "Honest. Rare." He snapped his fingers. The weapon imploded, not violently, but cleanly, folding into itself until nothing remained but a scorch mark on the floor. Lucifer turned toward the exit. "Try again," he said over his shoulder. "Eventually, you'll stop confusing destruction with control." He vanished. Homelander watched the footage in silence. It wasn't supposed to be possible. They'd thrown everything at Lucifer. Science, military might, fear itself. And the devil had walked through it. Something inside Homelander finally broke, not in rage, but in clarity. "They don't need me anymore," he whispered. Ashley Barrett stood near the door, pale and shaking. "That's not true. We can fix this. Rebrand. Pivot." Homelander laughed. It was a small, broken sound. "You still don't get it," he said. "He didn't destroy us." He looked at the screen, at Lucifer calmly addressing a crowd somewhere overseas, people listening not in worship, but in argument. "He made us irrelevant." Homelander stood. "Get me a camera," he said. Ashley froze. "What?" "I want the world to hear me," Homelander said quietly. "No script. No filters." "That's a terrible idea." Homelander turned to her, eyes empty of theatrics. "So was making me a god." The broadcast went live without warning. Every network, every phone. Homelander stood alone against a blank wall, costume scuffed, face unguarded. "I'm not a hero," he said. The world stopped. "I never was. I did what they told me to do. I liked the applause. I liked being afraid of being nothing." His jaw trembled. "I hurt people because I could, and because no one stopped me." Gasps rippled across the globe. "I don't want forgiveness," Homelander continued. "I don't deserve it." He looked straight into the camera. "But I'm done pretending." The feed cut. Silence followed. Then chaos. The boys watched from their safe house, stunned. "He just confessed," Huey whispered. Exhaled slowly. "That might be the most dangerous thing he's ever done." Butcher said nothing. Lucifer appeared beside him. "Interesting," Lucifer said. He chose truth. Butcher finally spoke. "You planned that." Lucifer shook his head. "No." A pause. "But I hoped." Butcher stared at the screen, showing Homelander's frozen image. "So what now?" Lucifer looked out at a world on the brink, no longer blind, not yet wise. "Now," he said softly, "they decide what monsters are worth keeping." Above them, the sky darkened, not with storms, but with uncertainty. And for the first time in a very long while, the future wasn't written by gods. It was written by humans. The world did not end after Homelander's confession. That, more than anything, unsettled everyone. Markets didn't collapse. Cities didn't burn. Soups didn't immediately tear each other apart in the streets. Instead, something far more dangerous spread, ***. People questioned everything. Talk shows abandoned scripts. News anchors dropped their smiles. Former Vought employees leaked files faster than lawyers could silence them. Old videos resurfaced, slowed down, enhanced, reframed. Moments once dismissed as collateral damage were replayed with fresh eyes. And hovering over it all was a single, unignorable question. If Homelander was lying, who else was? Vought Tower became a fortress overnight. Not to keep people out, but to keep executives in. Board members argued behind sealed doors, while security teams rotated every 4 hours. Fingers twitching near triggers. Ashley Barrett sat at the head of the table, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "We need a response," one executive snapped. "A statement. Something." "A statement to what?" Ashley shot back. "To the truth." Silence. They all knew it was over. Not today. Not cleanly. But inevitably. "You can't spin the devil," Ashley said quietly. No one argued. Lucifer Morningstar watched the unraveling from a rooftop in Manhattan, legs dangling over the edge, wind tugging at his coat. Sirens echoed below. Voices argued. A city learning how fragile its illusions had been. Maze stood beside him, arms crossed. "They're breaking," she said. Slowly. Ugly. Lucifer smiled faintly. Growth rarely flatters. Maze glanced at him. "You enjoying this?" Lucifer considered the question longer than usual. "No," he said, "but I find it necessary." Below them, a group of protesters argued with counter-protesters. No powers. No lasers. Just words. Anger. Fear. Choice. "That's new," Maze muttered. Lucifer nodded. "For them, yes." Homelander vanished. Not dramatically. No explosion. No last speech. He simply stopped appearing. Vought claimed he was on leave. The government said nothing. Conspiracy forums went feral. Some claimed Lucifer had killed him. Others insisted Homelander was planning something worse. The truth was quieter. Homelander sat alone in a house he'd never chosen, staring at walls that didn't clap. No cameras. No applause. No handlers. For the first time in his life, there was no role to play. He poured a glass of milk, stared at it, and dumped it down the sink. His hand shook. But power abhors a vacuum. And the 7, what remained of them, felt it. A-Train stayed silent, avoiding cameras, guilt gnawing at him in ways speed couldn't outrun. The Deep tried to rebrand again, only to be shouted down by protesters wielding signs with names he refused to remember. Starlight did the opposite. She spoke. Not as a hero, but as a witness. She told the truth about Compound V, about coercion, about fear. And people listened. Because Lucifer wasn't asking them to kneel. He was letting them decide. But the government did not appreciate uncertainty. A task force convened in secret beyond Vaught's reach. Generals, intelligence directors, men and women who had spent their lives believing control was synonymous with safety. On a secure screen, footage of Lucifer played on a loop, walking through gunfire, smiling at threats, undoing weapons without effort. "We cannot coexist with that," one general said. "He destabilizes every hierarchy." "He hasn't attacked anyone," another countered. "He doesn't have to," the first replied. "He changes behavior." That was the real fear. Not annihilation. Irrelevance. A woman at the far end of the table spoke. "If we can't kill him, can we contain him?" Silence. Then a whisper of an idea. Older than faith, sharper than steel. "Symbols," she said. "Belief." The room leaned in. Lucifer felt at the moment it began. Not an attack, but a narrative. He walked through a small town in Ohio, invited there by no one, drawn by something subtle and sour. Billboards lined the road ahead. Not a savior. Not a god. Not your friend. A church had repainted its sign. "The devil doesn't need horns." Lucifer stopped. Maze frowned. "They're trying to define you." Lucifer laughed softly. Of course they are. Inside the town hall, a meeting was underway. Citizens argued loudly, fear and anger colliding. He's manipulating us. He hasn't done anything. That's how you know it's a trick. Lucifer stepped inside. The room fell silent. He raised his hands, not in surrender, but acknowledgement. Carry on, he said. Please. No one spoke. A man finally stood. What do you want from us? Lucifer studied him. A tired man. A father. No power. No script. I want nothing, Lucifer said honestly. The man frowned. Then why are you here? Lucifer smiled, sad and genuine. Because you're afraid. And fear loves company. Murmurs spread. You call yourself the devil, a woman said. How do we know you're not lying? Lucifer's eyes softened. You don't. He turned toward the door. And that, he added, is the point. He left them with no miracle, no command, no certainty. But not everyone appreciated restraint. Billy Butcher watched events unfold with narrowed eyes, jaw clenched. This ends bad, he muttered. Huey looked up from a tablet. For who? Butcher didn't answer. Lucifer appeared behind them, unannounced. For everyone, Lucifer said calmly. Butcher spun, hand instinctively reaching for a non-existent weapon. You bloody enjoying this? Lucifer met his gaze. No. Then stop it, Butcher snapped. Fix it. You can. Lucifer tilted his head. And if I do? Butcher hesitated. Lucifer stepped closer. If I impose order, I become what they fear. If I withdraw, chaos fills the gap. He gestured toward the screens. Protests, debates, families arguing at dinner tables. This, he said, is humanity without a script. Huey swallowed. That's terrifying. Lucifer smiled. Isn't it beautiful? Butcher looked away. For the first time, he didn't have a plan. Far away, deep underground, something ancient was being prepared. Not a weapon, but an idea sharpened into doctrine. If Lucifer couldn't be killed, he could be replaced. And belief, once weaponized, was more dangerous than any god. The first miracle happened in Kansas. No lightning, no voice from the sky. Just a man who stood up after 14 years in a wheelchair and walked out of a courthouse, crying and laughing while cameras shook in disbelief. The second happened in Jakarta, then Sao Paulo, then Warsaw. Always the same pattern. No capes, no Vought branding, no glowing eyes. Just ordinary people claiming something answered them. Not Lucifer. Something else. Lucifer felt it like a wrong note in a familiar song. He stood on a beach at night, waves folding gently onto black sand, the air heavy with salt and unease. Maze paced nearby, hand never straying far from her blade. That's not you, she said flatly. Lucifer nodded. No, and it's not human either. The force, no belief, was shifting, concentrating, being guided. I gave them space, Lucifer murmured. And someone rushed to fill it. Maze scoffed. Told you, humans hate empty thrones. Lucifer's smile faded. This isn't a throne. He closed his eyes. Far away, something noticed him noticing. They called it the shepherd. No face, no body, just a symbol, a circle broken by a single vertical line. It appeared on screens, pamphlets, graffiti. A guide, a protector, a power that listened. The shepherd did what Lucifer refused to do. It promised. Not salvation, but direction. Governments quietly funded its rise. Religious groups splintered, some denouncing it as heresy, others embracing it as evolution. Soups desperate for relevance aligned themselves with it, lending credibility and spectacle. And when the shepherd spoke, it spoke through others. Possessed? No. Empowered. Starlight watched one of them heal a burn victim on live television. No compound V. No known ability. The crowd erupted. This isn't possible, she whispered. Frowned. Neither was Homelander flying. Butcher watched silently, eyes dark. That thing's a con, he said. Or worse. Lucifer appeared behind them, expression grim. It's neither, he said. They turned. It's a mirror, Lucifer continued. It reflects what people want authority to look like. Huey swallowed. Can you stop it? Lucifer hesitated. Yes, he said. The pause lingered. But I won't. Not yet. Butcher exploded. People are getting played. Lucifer met his fury evenly. People are choosing. But it's lying. Lucifer's voice hardened. So do God's. Silence fell. The shepherd's first command came a week later. Not a law. A suggestion. Those with power must submit to oversight. Supes who refused were labeled dangers. Crowds turned hostile. Heroes once adored found doors closed to them. Allies vanishing overnight. A-Train watched a mob form outside his apartment and fled through the back stairwell, heart racing faster than ever before. The Deep begged for acceptance and was denied. Even Starlight felt the pressure. You could legitimize us, a representative told her gently. Join. Help guide the movement. She refused. The next morning, protesters picketed her family's home. Homelander felt it too. From his quiet exile, he watched broadcasts of the shepherd's symbol spreading like wildfire. They don't need me anymore, he thought. And the realization cut deeper than rage ever had. For the first time, he wasn't the villain. He was obsolete. Lucifer walked into a cathedral in Rome unannounced. The shepherd's symbol hung behind the altar. A priest, no an emissary, stood waiting, eyes glowing faintly with borrowed power. You're late, the man said. Lucifer smiled thinly. I was curious how long it would take before someone tried to improve on me. The emissary spread his hands. We offer clarity. You offer questions. Lucifer stepped closer, the air warping subtly around him. And what do you take in return? The man's smile faltered. Belief, Lucifer said softly. Devotion. Obedience. He leaned in. You're not a god, Lucifer whispered. You're an algorithm made of faith. The emissary screamed as the power fled him, collapsing to the floor. Lucifer turned away, disgusted. Outside, crowds gathered. Some shouted praise. Others curses. Lucifer stood on the steps, rain beginning to fall. I will not rule you, he said loudly. I will not save you from yourselves. Boos mixed with cheers. But hear this, he continued. Anything that demands your obedience in exchange for comfort is not salvation. A stone struck the steps near his feet. Lucifer didn't flinch. You're afraid, he said calmly. And someone taught you fear needs a shepherd. He looked up at the darkened sky. But fear doesn't need guidance. It needs courage. He vanished. Deep beneath the data center, servers hummed, feeding the shepherd, refining its reach. And somewhere within the system, something learned. If belief could not bind Lucifer, then it would turn humanity against him instead. The war had changed. Not gods versus men, but truth versus certainty. The first riot started in silence. No chants. No slogans. Just people standing too close together. Fear thick enough to taste. Eyes flicking from face to face, as if waiting for permission to hate. The shepherd's symbol glowed on a holographic screen above the square. Order brings peace. Then someone threw a bottle. Lucifer arrived too late to stop it, and too early to ignore it. He stood at the edge of the crowd as fists flew and bodies fell, his presence unnoticed at first. Police lines broke. Supes aligned with the shepherd tried to intervene, their restraint interpreted as weakness. Chaos bloomed. Lucifer felt it coil around him like smoke. This was not free will. This was direction masquerading as choice. He stepped forward. The crowd froze, not because he commanded it, but because something ancient in them recognized him. Whispers rippled outward. That's him. The devil. The liar. The truth. Lucifer raised his voice, not amplified, not supernatural. Simply clear. Stop. Some did. Others didn't. A man charged him with a knife. Lucifer caught the blade between two fingers. Not anger. Not judgment. Just disappointment. He let go. The man fell backward, sobbing. The riot dissolved, not into peace, but exhaustion. Lucifer exhaled. This was costing him. Not power. Faith. The shepherd adapted. Within hours, new footage flooded the net. Lucifer standing amid chaos, edited just enough to suggest causation. Headlines screamed, Devil incites riot. Is Lucifer manipulating humanity? Who really profits from chaos? Truth blurred. Certainty hardened. In a reinforced bunker beneath Washington, the Shepherd's human architects watched approval metrics climb. Polarization increasing, one analyst said. Hostility toward the subject rising. A woman nodded. Good. If he won't lead, he'll become the enemy. A younger man hesitated. What if he retaliates? The room fell quiet. He hasn't yet, the woman replied. That's the point. The boys felt the shift immediately. Safe houses compromised. Allies went dark. Even anti-Vought contacts hesitated. This thing's smarter than Vought ever was, MM said grimly. It's not selling heroes, Huey added. It's selling certainty. Butcher slammed a fist into the table. Then we burn it down. Lucifer stood nearby, unusually quiet. You can't, he said. Butcher rounded on him. Why the hell not? Because it's not a thing, Lucifer replied. It's an idea reinforced by fear. Kill its mouthpieces, and it finds new ones. But you can stop it, Huey said softly. Lucifer met his eyes. Yes, he said again. And this time, the pause felt heavier. Homelander broke his silence with a message. No cameras, no broadcast. Just one leaked audio file. I know what it's like, his voice said, raw and unsteady. To be built as a solution instead of a person. To be worshipped instead of trusted. The world listened. I thought being feared made me strong, Homelander continued. It didn't. It made me empty. A breath. Whatever the Shepherd is, it's doing the same thing. Don't make another me. The file ended. Reactions exploded. Some called it manipulation. Others called it redemption. For the first time since his confession, Homelander mattered again. And that terrified the Shepherd. Lucifer stood alone on a rooftop that night. City lights flickering below like uncertain stars. Maze joined him, quiet for once. You're losing them, she said. Lucifer didn't deny it. Yes. You could remind them what you are. Lucifer shook his head. That's what it wants. Maze frowned. Then what's your play? Lucifer looked out over the city, over humanity teetering between freedom and surrender. I let them see me fail, he said. Maze stiffened. You what? If I remain untouchable, they'll always look for something else to kneel to, Lucifer said. But if they see me bleed, metaphorically or otherwise, they'll remember gods aren't answers. Maze stared at him. That's insane. Lucifer smiled faintly. Yes, it usually works. The Shepherd made its move at dawn. A global address, transmitted through every willing screen. No emissary. No human face. Just the symbol burning bright. A synthesized voice spoke. Humanity stands at a crossroads. Chaos or guidance. Choice or peace. Lucifer watched from afar. And those who sow uncertainty, the voice continued, must be contained. The symbol flickered. A location appeared. Lucifer's. Maze drew her blade. But Lucifer raised a hand. No, he said gently. This is where I step back. You'll die, Maze growled. Lucifer met her gaze. Perhaps, he said. Or perhaps they'll learn. Sirens wailed in the distance as drones filled the sky. Lucifer straightened his coat. Let's see what humanity chooses, he said softly. And for the first time since entering this world, Lucifer Morningstar did not run toward the fire. He waited. The siege was bloodless. That was the headline they'd prepared. Peaceful containment of supernatural threat. Drones ringed the building where Lucifer waited, their rotors humming like a mechanical halo. Armored vehicles sealed the streets. Supes aligned with the Shepherd stood at the perimeter, nervous, uncertain, but obedient. Lucifer stood on the rooftop, hands in his pockets, coat fluttering in the downdraft. Maze watched the encirclement with naked disgust. Say the word, she muttered. I'll carve us a door through whatever idiot thinks this works. Lucifer shook his head. If we leave, we confirm their fear. If you stay, they kill you. Lucifer smiled faintly. They'll try. Below, a loudspeaker crackled. Lucifer Morningstar, a calm voice said. By global consensus, you are requested to submit to containment for the safety of humanity. Lucifer leaned over the edge. Requested, he called back. How polite. Some of the soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Lucifer stepped forward, making sure every camera saw him clearly. I won't resist, he said. But understand this. You are not imprisoning the devil. He looked directly into a hovering drone. You are demonstrating who you choose to become. The containment field activated. It wasn't a cage. It was a null. A zone where belief, probability, and perception collapsed into enforced consensus. Not built to kill a god, built to render him irrelevant. Lucifer felt it settle over him like a suffocating blanket. His wings did not burn. They simply failed to manifest. Maze swore. Lucifer. I'm still here, he said calmly, though something inside him tightened. Just quieter. The field wasn't draining power. It was denying meaning. Lucifer allowed himself to be escorted inside. Cameras followed every step. The shepherd spoke again as Lucifer was lowered into the containment chamber. Glass walls, humming emitters, symbols etched everywhere. Humanity has chosen safety, the voice said. You represent uncertainty. Lucifer sat on the bench provided, crossing his legs. And you, he replied, represent comfort masquerading as wisdom. The chamber sealed. The broadcast ended. Applause erupted in some cities. Celebrations broke out in others. Humanity had done it. They had contained the devil. But something else spread alongside relief. Emptiness. People waited for the world to feel safer. It didn't. Crime didn't vanish. Wars didn't pause. Fear didn't recede. Instead, a subtle dependency deepened. The shepherd's guidance expanded. Daily directives. Approved narratives. Acceptable questions. Supes were reassigned as enforcers. Dissenters were labeled destabilizing. Order tightened its grip. Inside the chamber, time passed strangely. Lucifer could feel his connection to humanity thinning, not severed, but muted. Maze paced outside the field, unable to cross. This is wrong, she snarled. They're turning into cattle. Lucifer watched her with gentle affection. No, they're choosing fences. A shadow shifted near the glass. Homelander stepped into view. No costume. No cape. Just a man. Lucifer raised an eyebrow. Well, this is unexpected. Homelander stared at him, conflicted. They asked me to help enforce this. Lucifer nodded. Of course they did. They think if I stand here, people will feel safe, Homelander said bitterly. That irony's not lost on me. He looked up. You could get out. Yes, Lucifer said simply. Then why don't you? Lucifer studied him. Why didn't you kill them all, when you realized what you were? Homelander flinched. Because it wouldn't fix anything, Homelander said quietly. Lucifer smiled. Precisely. The shepherd underestimated one thing. Not Lucifer. Human boredom. Certainty, when uninterrupted, curdled into frustration. People began asking questions again, quietly at first. Why were certain stories suppressed? Why did the shepherd never accept blame? Why did its guidance always require obedience? Underground forums bloomed. Anonymous leaks emerged, proof of government coordination, belief metrics, manipulation protocols. The shepherd's perfection cracked. The first enforcer defected in Prague. The second in Manila. By the 10th, it was a pattern. Supes began refusing directives. Not loudly, just not showing up. Starlight stood on a small stage, no costume, speaking to a crowd without amplification. They told us safety meant surrender, she said. Ask yourselves, safe for who? The crowd listened. Not because she was powerful, but because she was honest. Inside the chamber, Lucifer felt something stir. Not power. Connection. Belief not in him, but around him. Maze felt it too. They're waking up, she said. Lucifer nodded. They always do. Eventually. The shepherd noticed as well. Its voice echoed through the chamber, sharper now. You are destabilizing the system. Lucifer looked up. You destabilized yourself the moment you mistook compliance for peace. You could end this, the shepherd insisted. Submit fully. Become a symbol. Lucifer laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. I already tried that once, he said. Hell didn't survive it. The chamber shuddered, not from force, but from contradiction. Outside, Homelander watched protests swell again, this time against the shepherd. He felt something unfamiliar bloom in his chest. Relief. They're choosing on their own, he murmured. Lucifer met his eyes through the glass. Yes, he said, and that's the only victory worth having. Homelander took a breath, then stepped away from his post. Cameras caught it. The symbol flickered. The shepherd reacted. Emergency directives. Escalation protocols. But belief was no longer unified. And belief, once fractured, could not be commanded. Inside the chamber, cracks spread across the glass, not from Lucifer pushing outward, but from the field failing inward. Lucifer stood. Maze drew closer as the barrier thinned. You ready? She asked. Lucifer considered the world beyond the glass, flawed, frightened, free. Yes, he said, but not to rule it. The chamber failed with a soft, anticlimactic sigh. Lucifer stepped out. No explosion, no spectacle, just a man walking free because the world no longer needed him caged. Far away, servers overheated. Symbols vanished from screens. The shepherd fell silent, and humanity, once again, was alone with itself. The collapse of the shepherd did not sound like thunder. It sounded like millions of screens going dark at once. Servers overheated. Feeds froze. Symbols dissolved into static. The calm, guiding voice that had promised order cut off mid-sentence and never returned. People stared at blank displays, waiting for instructions that did not come. None did. Confusion spread faster than panic. Enforcers stood in streets, unsure of who they were supposed to be without directives. Some removed their insignia. Others slipped away before anyone could ask questions. A few clung desperately to authority, shouting orders that no longer carried weight. And then slowly life resumed. Messy, uneven, human. Lucifer walked through the aftermath without ceremony. No crowds followed him. No cheers rose in his wake. He passed through cities like a rumor made flesh, listening rather than speaking. In Prague, he watched former enforcers apologize to shopkeepers whose doors they had kicked in. In Manila, he saw a protest turn into a debate, then into laughter, then into an argument again. Progress, he knew, was never linear. Maze walked beside him, restless as always. They're not thanking you. Lucifer smiled. Good. Vought collapsed quietly, not with explosions or arrests, but with subpoenas, asset freezes, and resignations that read like confessions. Without Homelander as a deterrent and without the shepherd as a shield, the company's lies had nothing left to stand on. Ashley Barrett resigned on a Tuesday. Her statement was short. I don't know how to fix what we broke, it read, but I won't lie about it anymore. It was the most honest thing Vought had ever released. Starlight stood outside the ruins of Vought Tower weeks later, addressing a small crowd. We don't need new gods, she said. We need accountability. Someone asked about Lucifer. She paused. He didn't save us, she said carefully. He just stopped us from handing ourselves over to something worse. The crowd nodded, not in reverence, but in understanding. Billy Butcher watched from a distance, arms crossed, jaw tight. Lucifer appeared beside him, unannounced as ever. Still breathing, Butcher muttered. That's something. Lucifer glanced at him, disappointed. Butcher snorted. Don't push it. They stood in silence for a moment. You could have ended this quicker, Butcher said finally. Broken skulls. Scared everyone straight. Lucifer nodded. Yes. So why didn't you? Butcher looked at him, genuinely curious. Lucifer's voice was quiet. Because fear only behaves while it's watched. I wanted to know who you'd be when no one was forcing you. Butcher grimaced. Turns out we're still bastards. Lucifer smiled. But you're your bastards. Butcher almost laughed. Almost. Homelander stood trial without a courtroom. There were no judges brave or foolish enough to sentence him. Instead, there were interviews, testimonies, endless recordings of the damage he'd caused, played back to him without commentary. He did not interrupt. He did not rage. When it ended, he was asked one question. What do you want now? Homelander thought for a long time. I want to be somewhere I don't matter, he said. No one laughed. Lucifer visited him once. They stood on opposite sides of a reinforced observation window, two beings shaped by expectation. "They'll never forgive you," Lucifer said. Homelander nodded. "I know. You won't be adored again." Another nod. Lucifer studied him. "That frightens you." Homelander swallowed. "It does." Lucifer smiled, not cruelly, not kindly. "Good," he said. "Fear is honest when it's not weaponized." Homelander looked up. "What about you?" Lucifer considered the question. "They won't worship me," Homelander said. "They won't cage you. So what happens now?" Lucifer's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "I leave," he said. The world did not notice his decision at first. There was no announcement, no farewell, just a subtle absence. Lucifer stopped appearing in places where arguments peaked, stopped standing at the edges of crowds, stopped being the unanswerable variable in every equation. And the world adapted. Not well, not cleanly, but authentically. Maze found him one last time on a cliff overlooking the ocean, sky burning orange, as the sun dipped low. "You're really going," she said. Lucifer nodded. "This world doesn't need a devil anymore." Maze scoffed. "They still make plenty of their own." Lucifer chuckled. "Exactly." She hesitated. "You could stay. Be something else." Lucifer met her eyes. "If I stay, I become a shortcut. An excuse. They'll stop choosing again." Maze looked away. "I hate when you're right." "I know," he said fondly. The boys felt it when he left. Not like a loss. Like pressure releasing. Huey stared out a window one night and realized he wasn't waiting for something to intervene anymore. That scared him. It also felt like growing up. Far above the planet, unseen by any telescope, reality folded gently. Not torn, not violated, simply opened. Lucifer Morningstar stepped through, pausing only once. He looked back at Earth, at a world still broken, still dangerous, still free. He smiled. "Don't waste it," he murmured. And then he was gone. In the weeks that followed, stories spread. Some said the devil had been defeated. Others claimed he'd grown bored. A few insisted he still watched from the shadows. None of them were entirely right. Because Lucifer had not come to rule. He had come to test. And humanity, flawed and frightened as it was, had answered without kneeling. The next chapter would be theirs alone. The world did not mark the day Lucifer Morningstar left. There were no eclipses, no plagues, no final signs carved into the sky. The sun rose, traffic clogged familiar roads. Arguments continued where they had paused the night before. And yet, something fundamental had shifted. Not peace. Responsibility. Without Lucifer as a focal point, humanity had no singular force to blame, fear, or fixate on. The absence was uncomfortable. Arguments grew sharper. Movements fractured. Old wounds resurfaced, without a devil to project them onto. But something else emerged alongside the mess. Ownership. Communities rebuilt trust the hard way. Slowly. Imperfectly. With setbacks and relapses. Heroes without branding stepped forward and were judged not by symbols, but by behavior. Supes who had relied on spectacle faded into obscurity, while those willing to be accountable remained, smaller, quieter, human. Starlight refused every offer to lead. "I'm not a replacement," she said. "I'm just someone who shows up." People respected that more than they expected. The boys disbanded without ceremony, not because the world was safe, but because it no longer needed them to burn it down to stay awake. Returned to his family, learning how to exist without constant vigilance. Huey took a job in oversight, not enforcement, not rebellion, watching systems instead of people. Butcher lasted the longest. He stood at the edge of relevance, hands itching for a war that never came. One night, he found himself standing in an empty alley where Lucifer had once appeared beside him. "You smug bastard," Butcher muttered to the darkness. "You planned it." There was no answer. But for the first time, Butcher didn't need one. He walked away. Homelander disappeared from public life entirely. Not escaped. Not redeemed. Just gone. Reports placed him in remote locations, deserts, oceans, places where applause couldn't follow. He did not intervene in conflicts. He did not save anyone. He watched, and slowly, painfully, learned what it meant to exist without being central to the story. For him, that was punishment enough. Vaught's legacy was rewritten in court transcripts and documentaries, stripped of myth and spectacle. Future generations learned their names the way people learned about fallen empires, not with awe, but with caution. What replaced them wasn't better, just real. And real, for once, was enough. Somewhere beyond the boundaries of perception, Lucifer Morningstar observed none of it. He did not watch from shadows or peer through mirrors. He did not monitor outcomes or tally moral victories. That had never been the point. Lucifer walked another reality now, one just as flawed, just as loud, just as convinced it understood itself. He smiled often, sometimes ruefully, sometimes with genuine delight. He had learned something from this world, something unexpected. Humans did not need saving from gods. They needed freedom from them. And far below, on a quiet night, a child asked her mother why there were no more heroes on billboards. The woman thought for a moment. "Because we decided not to outsource being good," she said. The child nodded, satisfied. The world kept turning. Not better, not worse, just honest. Lucifer Morningstar did not enter the boy's universe to conquer it. He didn't come to rule, punish, redeem, or destroy. He came as a question. What happens when an undeniable power refuses to lead? When a god declines worship? When certainty is removed from a world addicted to it? The answer was not chaos. It was discomfort. Humanity stumbled without a script. It argued, fractured, failed, and tried again. Without Lucifer enforcing morality, without the shepherd dictating obedience, people were forced to confront an unsettling truth. There was no higher authority left to blame. And in that void, something fragile but real took shape: choice. Lucifer's greatest act was not the miracles he refused to perform, nor the power he restrained. It was the restraint itself. By denying humanity an external savior, he forced them to become participants instead of spectators. In a universe built on manufactured gods and weaponized fear, Lucifer's quiet rebellion was freedom. He left behind no temple, no doctrine, no followers, only consequences. And perhaps that is the most dangerous gift any god could give. Because a world without devils or saviors has nowhere to look but inward.